When we talk about object-oriented programming, it's difficult not to talk about inheritance. It's very used when building classes, and that's the reason of my number three of my top 10 Aurelius features. It's because Aurelius smoothly support inheritance. I'm going to show you how it works with Aurelius, but basically it allows you to use inheritance in your entity classes in a very object-oriented way, and it just works when retrieving and saving objects. This is a small example where I have two entities, one called my TMyEvent, which is the base class, and the other one is TDatabaseEvent. Actually, there are three classes here, and the other is TComEvent. It's just pseudo classes, it's not a real application, and you can extrapolate to your situation. And my event gets inheritance attribute, which indicates it is the base class of my hierarchy, and it has those properties ID, title, event type, event time, which is common for all classes. Then we have database event, which has an additional DB type property, and com event, which has properties host and port. Both database event and com event are inherited from TMyEvent. Well, that's pretty much what's needed for the mapping, and we can see immediately how we can use it just by saving some records here, some objects. In this small example, I create an object manager and create 7 entities of inherited from TMyEvent, 3 TDatabaseEvent, event, 3 com event, and 1 TMyEvent. So we save a lot of objects here, just the way I do with any entity in Aurelius. And but the interesting thing is that I can manipulate them using polymorphism. This is the application I have built for the example. In this button I create the items here, and in the other button I just retrieve the list of TMyEvent objects from the database ordered by event time. Here's how polymorphism gets into action, because I'm asking Aurelius, please give all TMyEvent objects you have. And let's see what happens here. If I press the button create items, it will insert the objects in my database. And when I list here, I see that the properties of the objects I use, of course I use it Aurelius dataset here to show my objects retrieved. And I have the ID of the objects, the title, event time, which are common properties for the base class TMyEvent. And I have added a not persisted property here called object class, which just shows the class name of the object. Then we can see here that when we retrieve TMyEvent objects, even though Aurelius retrieves the concrete class, the instance is actually a TCom event or a TDatabaseEvent event or TMyEvent. That's the interesting part of it. We can see from the SQL log here that Aurelius creates the proper SQL statement to retrieve to execute the polymorphic query, which is select all columns from my base table, but also from the com event table and database event table. Actually, that's another point, which is how the tables are created to hold the inheritance structure. Let me show you the database structure here. Here we can see that it created 3 tables. One is my event, which holds the information about title and event time. And then we have 2 additional tables for the inheritance classes, database, which holds the DB type column, and com event, which holds host and port. And of course, we only have records on those tables for the actual instances of tcom event, for example. If you go back to the grid, there is one interesting point here in Aurelius dataset, which it allows you to get a polymorphic view of the data as well. For example, I can create here a field named dbType, and if I execute the application, it shows the dbType property for the database event classes. So even though this record, for example, this underlying object entity is a tcom event, it doesn't have the dbType property, the Aurelius dataset ignores it. So it makes it easy and possible for you to display specific data from descendant classes without, and Aurelius that dataset will ignore that property if the base class it's a different class or the property is not available. Finally, there is another way to hold a class object hierarchy in the database, which is, if you note here in the mapping, you see that I have indicated that the inheritance strategy will be joined tables. There is another option which is single table, which means that all data from all classes, inherited classes, will be saved in the same table. I'm going to delete the database and create a new one using this mapping. And the only difference here is that there are some additional attributes we need to add, which is discriminator column. That means which column in that single table will indicate to me the class of the object, and of course the value for each class, the value of that field. For example, if I have a tmy event in the table, the event flag field column will have the value of my. If it's a database event, it's a db, and if it's a com event, it's com. Let's change here the unit we are using. Let's use the single mapping and let's execute it. We can see that the behavior is exactly the same. It's just objects with a hierarchy, but the difference is in the table structure. If you reopen the database here, we will see there is a single table named my event, and it's another approach to saving data. The event flag column will hold the type, the class type. This is a tcom event, this is a tdatabase event, tmy event, and the additional properties will always be in the same table. Of course, those properties must not be required, otherwise this single table approach cannot be used. It allows you to really think in an object-oriented way. For example, that's not even the best part. The interesting part comes when we start to create other things, like some class here, and we reference classes of their hierarchy. For example, I can have a last db event here property that reference a tdatabase event, or even a list of tcom events. You can see that we have compile time check of types and we have our model more strict, more complete, and Aurelius will manage all those type checking and manage all the persistent of those objects in the database for us. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel to receive notifications about upcoming videos. Thank you.